And we are live, guys. Welcome to another live stream. Well, it's not really live. We got to record this one. To the Men of High Value channel. My name is Joseph Darling. This is Cody Thomas sitting here with me. And we'll just start straight out of the block. Who are you, Cody? And why are you on my channel?
I'm just a curious cat that done a lot of digging into a lot of different things and happened to stumble into Bitcoin a number of years ago now. And I found your channel actually on YouTube and was intrigued by your content and started watching some of your videos and found them really valuable. So I kind of reached out to you initially and we got to talking, and then I was saying how I was into Bitcoin and you actually were pretty interested in Bitcoin. So then we kind of exchanged our information and here we are now. So that's how we connected. Yeah.
Fantastic. I've actually been quite fascinated. You're one of the subscribers or guys that I've spoken to. I mean, I've given free consultations to a lot of people throughout, this 2-year time frame, and you're one of them. And I was just so fascinated about your understanding and knowledge and background on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And you're kind of been my go-to guy, in terms of asking questions and figuring it out. So I was thinking it would be perfect for everyone else on my channel to get, that feedback from you as well. So that's why we're here right now. So I was thinking maybe you could explain to us why it would be wise for us to, well, no, first, tell us your background in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Other than me thinking you're amazing at it, tell me what you've been doing. What's your history there?
Yeah, sure. So initially I got into gold actually. I've always worked as a tradesman and I was working with this older European fella, and this was 20 years ago now. And he started asking me, he said, do you know where money comes from? And I said, no, actually I don't. I've never really thought about it. And he's like, oh, they just create it. They print it out of thin air. And I just couldn't quite wrap my head around it. I'm like, well, I worked so hard for it. What do you mean they just create it out of thin air? He's like, no, literally they just print it and they put it out into circulation. And anyways, that got me just really curious and I had to know the answers. So I started doing a lot of research back then into currency and where it came from, how it was created, all that kind of stuff. And that's initially what got me into gold. And I became I had a fascination with gold. And I could see how they were creating all this money and it was devaluing the currency. And I thought, man, I got to get into gold. So I bought a house when I was 22 and I approached my stepdad. I said, I'm selling the house. I'm going all into gold. And he said,
Oh,
you can't do that. You're 22. You don't know what you're talking about. He said, if anything, just put $1,000 in and, or $10,000 in and don't sell your house. And so I listened to him and I kept the house. I put the $10,000 I had into gold and it went up. Gold at the time was about 350 US dollars and or 500 Canadian, and now it's 2,500 Canadian and 1,700 US. So I would have done quite well there. But of course, when you're 22 and your stepdad tells you something, you think, oh, he's my father, I should probably listen. And I did. So anyways, that got me into the whole currency, trying to figure it out, understand it, learning more. And so I started kind of following all these other gurus that were talking about it. And I stumbled across Max Keiser. I don't know if you watched any of his stuff, but I highly recommend checking out his channel. He's really fascinating. He's just full of energy and he's got all kinds of experience with markets and stuff. And I was following his channel, he was speaking a lot about gold and silver at the time. And this was kind of in the 2008 financial crisis. And yeah, and then all of a sudden Bitcoin comes onto the scene and I first heard about it on his channel. And he said, there's this new digital currency, and he kind of started explaining what it was, but it was so new at that time. He just said, I highly recommend you guys get a little bit. This could be the future. And at the time it was actually $7.
Oh my gosh.
It was so cheap. And I
So
thought,
hold on a second. Hold
yeah,
on a second. You were 22 when? Which year was that? How old are you now?
okay, so I was 22, oh, 17 years ago. So
You're turning 40 this year or next year?
next year. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So this
And
sometime after I got into gold, you know.
right. Okay.
Yeah. So I first got
So
into gold at 22, and then
exactly. And that was 17 years ago. So and then you found Max Keiser, but he had a YouTube channel, or where did you find
YouTube. Yeah.
he did? Okay,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, already back then. So and then 2011, which is when Bitcoin came out, that's when he began starting talking about it, or was no, 2009 was it?
Yeah. It was more like 2009.
Right. Okay,
And
okay.
so I think it was 2009 or 2010 by the time I had heard about it.
Okay.
And I had all kinds of money sitting in the bank. I had been working really hard for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years at that point. And I'd been saving all my money, and I hadn't been buying that much gold or silver. So I had all this cash, and
What did
I,
you work at?
an electrician.
Okay, perfect.
So
Yeah.
I did all kinds of stuff with electrics. So, and I'd been just banking all my coin, and I'm just a really hard worker, and I like to save and put it away, and like I like to create wealth. And I've just read so many books on how to get rich. Like I've always been fascinated about how to
And
get
you
up.
didn't get a wife and kids either, so you actually had some extra cash.
That's it. Yeah, I didn't have all the liabilities. So so yeah, I
Perfect.
got this cash sitting around, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna throw $1,000 in, because what's $1,000? It really didn't matter to me at that time. $1,000 wasn't much. So I kind of did all my research, and I got to the point where I felt comfortable to put the money in, or somewhat comfortable. And I was like one click away from hitting the buy now. And a little voice was like, "It's digital though. You could get hacked. You don't know what you're doing." Like, and I actually chickened out. So
Amazing.
like so quick, and then I just watched it because I was like, oh, I'm not too sure. I'm gonna wait, and I sat on the sidelines for a while, and then the MT Gox hack happened. This was right in the early days, and I think Bitcoin rose up to maybe $140 or something. Like it happened pretty quick, and I was like, oh, maybe I should have bought. And then the big major exchange that was everyone was buying on at that time got hacked, or all of a sudden all the Bitcoin went missing. Probably the guy that was running the exchange, but no one really knows.
Who
And
knows? Yeah.
all these Bitcoins went missing. And I said, I knew it. It was going to get hacked. I'm so glad I didn't buy. Blah,
Mm.
blah, blah. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then I heard about it again. All of a sudden, it was $350, and I thought, oh man, what's going on here? Like, oh, it's too late to buy. I can't buy now. Like, I could have bought it $7. Like, and I'm kicking myself, and I'm thinking, oh, this sucks. And then, so I'm like, I'm just going to forget about it. It's too late to get in now. That's what I always hear people say. And I thought, I'm not touching it. $350 for a Bitcoin is crazy. I'm not paying that much. And I forgot about it. And next thing I heard, it surpassed the price of gold per ounce. And I thought, okay, this is not going away. This is getting big. And that's kind of, for me, that was the turning point where I thought, I'm going full on in this. I'm going to research it every waking hour. I read everything I could find. I followed all the accounts, and just really dug really deeply into the space and into the whole thing, wrapping my mind around it, trying to decide, is this a Ponzi scheme? Is it actually legit? Is it going to go somewhere? And all that. So that's kind of what got me into it.
And
And
when was this? When was it that you actually decided that, bro, this is gonna be it?
I think about 4 years ago was when I just got really obsessed, and I was like, okay, it passed the price of gold.
That was the beginning of 2016 then.
Yeah, something like
Must
that.
have been. Must have
Yeah,
been. Yeah.
yeah, I'd have to look over the charts. I know it was as soon as it passed the price of gold, I was like, I need to pay attention here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is
Exactly.
the digital, magic internet money worth more than gold?
It's
So,
ridiculous, right?
yeah.
Okay, so um why are we talking about this now though? Like in terms of why is this more relevant? now than ever before, even more relevant now than 2016. Why didn't I talk about Bitcoin 2 years ago? Why am I kind of suddenly talking about cryptocurrency and precious metals and stuff on my channel?
Great question. Yeah. I mean, it is a critical time for it, as we're seeing all these governments around the world are printing more money to try and limp their way through this economic crisis that we're having,
Yeah,
where a lot of these companies, they made bad decisions, and if we had true free market capitalism, they would have actually went bankrupt, and the whole thing, we would have had to go through, a bunch of insolvencies and bankruptcies, and things, the cream would have risen to the top per se. But the governments didn't want that to happen. That we have Keynesian economics, that they believe that they just, no matter what, their main solution is to create more currency. So if we start having a slump, what they do is they print more money, or they don't even print it anymore. They just add more digits digitally to the supply, but they add
right.
supply and then they pump it out traditionally in the form of debt. So traditionally, it was usually put into circulation in the form of mortgages and loans that they would give to the people, and then the people would take on this debt, and that money would therefore get into circulation in that manner.
Right.
Um, so what we're seeing right now with this current COVID crisis, which it's really interesting because I was following markets so closely, and I actually called the market top within 3 days. I said, this is the time, this is where you want to be shorting. I actually didn't have a shorting account set up, but I was like, it's going to crash any day. My family probably thought I was nuts. I actually started stockpiling food. I had never done that. I went and started buying food in bulk. I said, this thing's coming down any day. It's going to be this spring for sure. And then it
Mm,
wasn't even like a week or two later, it just started tanking. And so, and that was before they announced COVID. I really could just see it in the charts, like how everything was going parabolic and the debt levels,
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
just how it just really resembled even the 1930s stock market crash. So when I was seeing all this happening, and then COVID came out, I was like, there's the pin that pops the
That
bubble. No one
that's
really
the
knew
black swan. I
the
began
black
to see it
swan.
immediately in January. I was like, this could be it. This could be the black swan we've been looking for. And for those that don't know what a black swan event is basically when there's something unexpected that happens to the market that no one could have foreseen, that basically takes it down. And it didn't even need a black swan event in order for it to happen. Actually,
Yeah,
it was just like, it was already in September last year that they're talking about how, it was already happening then, and then suddenly this thing comes out of nowhere and makes its presence known
that's
in the
it.
world.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is that the governments are printing so large amounts of money that the probability of it going into hyperinflation in some of these currencies, and especially the dollar, is increasing. The probability of it happening. Is that
That's
correct?
true. Yes, yes. There's one thing I want to point out, and this is a fellow Mike Maloney I follow. If you don't follow him, he's just a great resource. And
Absolutely. I didn't follow him before one of my subscribers actually wrote him in there. So thank you, the guy who did that, because
yeah,
I watched the whole Hidden Secrets series
oh,
and
great.
I'm just
Yeah,
blown away. Oh my gosh, he's done such a great job. And now I'm following him too.
yeah. He's a genius when it comes to laying it all out. And he talks about deflation before inflation. So right now we're actually experiencing a bit of deflation where everyone's kind of nervous. So even though they're printing all this money and putting it into circulation, you think things would be increasing in price because we have the same amount of assets, but we've really increased the money supply. So what
By like
traditionally would
15% or something. It's like it's been
just,
massive just in
yeah,
2 months. Yeah,
unbelievable. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Keep going.
what normally would happen is when there's more money in circulation, people will demand more of that currency for the underlying asset because there's the same amount of assets but more of the currency. So
Yep.
therefore, right? It's like watering down the punch at the party when, it's like you're almost out of booze and you don't want the party to end. So you just add a bit of juice because you don't have any rum, and everyone's like, oh, they keep drinking, but you have to drink more and more and you're not getting the same effect. It's kind of like what's going on with the money supply, right? There's
Good
like
example.
the
Good
party's
example.
over, but all
Yeah.
these Keynesian economists don't want to stop partying. They want the free money to continue. They want all this, the stock market to keep going up. So they've been printing all this money, but things are still deflating. That's why the stock market's going down. And I believe we're actually going to see a correction in a lot of countries in real estate prices, especially here in Canada, where I'm at, and somewhat in the US. Um, the prices of real estate have just gone so parabolic in the last few years because of the money creation that happened in 2008. So there's kind of this like postponed effect where they print all this money and then it gets into circulation. But right after initial crash, what happens is people are nervous. So they like right now, a lot of people are getting free money, but people are nervous. So they're not going out and blowing it. So they're taking the money, but they're actually hoarding it and they're saving it because they're nervous. So that is like it's not working for the Keynesian economists because they need what's called the velocity of money. So that's how much the money is changing hands. So they can put a bunch into circulation, but if it's not actually changing hands, then it's not working for them. They need the money to start circulating and changing hands to stimulate the economy. So what's happened is the velocity has slowed down and they're printing more and more, trying to stimulate it, but everyone's hoarding, hoarding, hoarding. And what'll happen is
Hoarding, but they're also just stuck at home. Like
yeah,
they're not
can't
even
want,
able to spend it.
yeah. I mean, Amazon's happy, but what else? All the other businesses are, people have to cook at home now, where everyone was eating out, and you're not even allowed to go on trips if you wanted to. So all this
Exactly.
is getting put in, but no one can spend it. And what that is, it's money is energy. So there's all this energy being put into the system, but it's being pent up because it can't move. So the thing is, retailers now start to get nervous because they're sitting on stock. A lot of them, they have rent to pay, they have employees to pay, and they have all this stock that they had bought. So they start getting nervous. Without getting into this too much, this is what causes deflation. They start getting nervous, so they drop prices, and people start getting nervous about retirement because stocks are going down a bit. So then that creates more nervousness, and people think things are getting expensive. Oh, I better sell some stock. I better sell my second and third home, and just really kind of be more reserved with my.
Simply, people are uncertain, right? There's just
That's it.
uncertainty in the air, and they don't know what's going to happen next, basically.
That's it.
And the printing of money is just making it even worse because people are like, well, there's so much money. It's kind of like this, the people who are observing this understand that something is going on, and then there's other people who's just like, I just need my money, I just need my money, and they're just experiencing or wanting the government to just provide for them, right? That's kind of actually the majority of people. They just
It's true.
need cash right now so I can buy food and pay my rent.
Yeah,
But the people who actually know what's going on are uncertain, and when they're uncertain, that's when crazy things happen.
that's true. That's true. And they're all nervous. And I mean, we're seeing some big players sell off their stock and get out of markets, like Elon Musk, right? Stuff like that, selling all his goods, all his, yeah.
Which is so weird for me because, like, this is kind of a deviation, but if so much money is coming in, then all the prices should be really rising. Like, there shouldn't be a complete collapse anywhere because the prices would go up,
Well,
right?
okay, so that's true. That's what I'm talking about. There's this effect where it actually has a lag behind the money printing. So they print, 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 but people are too nervous, so they're not spending. So prices actually come down, and we'll have a short deflationary period. We
Meaning the dollar's value actually increases, right? It's kind of like worldwide. That's what has happened, is like the dollar is like, oh, because I have dollars now, I'm richer. But
it's
actually, it's kind of like it gets better before it gets massively worse. Am I
That's
correct?
it. Yeah, yeah. People are nervous. And actually what we're seeing, because the US dollar is the world reserve currency, so we're seeing a lot of these fringe currencies like Zimbabwe and stuff where they actually went into hyperinflation. They all sold, and a lot of them went into US dollars because they don't know any different. So people that are they don't understand finance, they'll just go to the next thing and they only know dollars. So they're like, Zimbabwe's dollars crashing, so they buy US dollars. And a lot of these other countries, same thing. And even in Canada, like we were on par, like, I don't know, probably 10 years ago now with the US dollar. But now it's like our dollar is worth 70 cents compared to their dollar. And so a lot of Canadians even are nervous, and they'll sell their Canadian dollars and go into the
And
US.
buy US dollars.
So the US dollar has actually been getting pushed up because
I
the
know.
currencies are collapsing into it. So this is all going on. So that, but everyone's still nervous, and even the U.S. dollar, it's like it is. They say cash is king in times like this to some extent because we do have deflation. Like even in 2008, if you analyze the charts from then, you'll see that the initial crash happened in 08, and it actually took a year and a half for gold. Gold actually went down in value for a year and a half, or sorry, 2 years. Gold decreased in value, and silver decreased in value before they ramped up, and then they really like went parabolic in price. So
Mm-hmm.
you'll have that in an initial crash. Everything starts going down because a lot of people are leveraged. A lot of people invested in this stuff with debt. And so when markets start to crash and people are nervous, they're forced to sell to actually survive. So yeah, they might have bought, you know, some gold or some Bitcoin or even real estate, but now they're like, I can't even feed my family. So what's the first thing that go? All their toys, all their spending gets cut. Then they start selling off investments. They're like, okay, my stocks are down, but I need to eat, so I'm going to sell at a loss. And they sell more and more and more. So that is what creates the initial deflation. And meanwhile, the whole time, the central banking cartel, I like to call them, will be printing money and pumping it in, trying to get things to inflate
Going.
because they do not want deflation. If we go into a deflationary spiral, it can happen where you can't come back. Like it happened in Japan, starting in '99, they went into deflation and they never came back. Real estate crashed 60% in Japan, and it actually just never came back. Like I was there 25 years ago, and a McDonald's meal was $15. And now, 20 years later, you can get a meal for $1.50. So it went the other way. It totally deflated and it never came back.
Interesting, because someone commented on one of my or replied to one of my comments on Graham Stephan's video. I was just like, the last video he made about inflation and how it's actually good for the economy. I was just like, and then there was another guy who said, "Oh, you know, but hyperinflation is bad, but deflation is worse." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like that doesn't make any sense at all." Because
Yeah.
like deflation in a good economy is actually like it's actually good for the economy. It's good for people because I mean it's horrible initially because people have, you know, lose a lot of value, blah blah blah. But hyperinflation, like that just collapses the entire like community, and like this society becomes like Venezuela, Zimbabwe. It's like it becomes intense. So
Yeah.
so if hyperinflation is possible in America, I mean, obviously that's going to mean a lot to the whole world, but how much time are we talking? Like, what's the thing that makes it go overboard? You know what I mean? Like, what's the kicker? And can we expect it in the next 12 to 18 months, or could it take longer? Because some people say that, you know, America has tons of assets, and because they have assets with land and real estate, you know, we've got tons of net worth, so that we have some debt doesn't really matter.
Yeah, so I recently heard something like the debt alone in US dollars is, I think, just in the next couple of years, they're forecasting just the amount that it's costing to service the debt that the US government is holding. It's going to
Yep.
cost them over half of their GDP, which is insane. Like it's going to cost them more than than their entire military spending, which they have the biggest military and most spending in the world, and it's going to cost more just to service their debt. So to answer that question, no one really knows how long deflation will last, and what will cause hyperinflation, or what can and most likely will, is the fact that the governments right now are printing so much cash trying to prop this up. I think we're well over $3 trillion in the US just in the last 2 months or something. So
And there's another 3 trillion coming now in the next month or so.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what will eventually cause the inflation, is that all that money got put in, and deflation will go down and down and down, and you'll hit a point where people are finally like, oh, that's actually a really good deal. Like, you only want 100G for that house, I'll hop in. So then you'll hit that bottom eventually. No one knows when, but it will happen. And then all that cash that everyone's been hoarding and sitting on because they're nervous, all of a sudden starts flooding in, and people rush to buy assets because that's when the dollars really start devaluing. And we saw the first hints of hyperinflation over the last 10 years, since 2008, because it would have been nice if we actually went into deflation then, and if we actually dealt with all this debt that we had. But no one wanted to go through the fire. They wanted to just keep pushing it and moving forward. So now we have an even bigger problem. There's way more money and debt in circulation. And so once all this money that they've created comes rushing back in to buy hard assets, true tangible assets like real estate, businesses, food, gardening tools, farming tools, all that kind of stuff. That's, people, like, dollars have no value. It's just what people believe. Like, it's a piece of paper, if at best, or a coin that doesn't even have any valuable metal in it anymore. Like, it used to be silver and gold that had true value, and like the nickel had, because it had metal in it.
It's fake now. Like, even the houses that people own, like, it's fake. Like, they have it, but it's not even theirs. It belongs to the bank, and like, it's not worth anything if it just, if the dollar completely hyperinflates. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the value of the house could come down 80% or even more.
Sure. For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I love real estate, but I've been sitting on the sidelines for quite some time, because with real estate, it's a timing thing. Like, people always believe that no matter what, a house is an asset because so many people did so well on it. But, it's really a timing thing. If you're getting in right now, you're running huge risk, because we most likely will experience deflation because no one's allowed to work. So how are people affording $1 million+ homes? I just don't get it. If we're all locked down for a year, if this continues on for another year or something, or 2 years, like, we just don't know. The unemployment's already surpassed that of the Great Depression, and it's going to be insane. Like, all kinds of people.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, and stuff's still going up. Like, that's going to have to basically come into the market where people will be forced to sell. That'll be the deflationary period that we'll experience. However, at one point, we will have all that currency rush back in that they've been creating and putting into circulation. And that's when we run the risk of hyperinflation, which basically means everyone just starts ditching the dollar to get anything they can get their hands on that's something tangible. So people will go to gold because it's a hard metal that they can't just create more of. To get more gold, you actually have to go and build a gold mine. It takes billions of dollars, or millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, years and years
to get the gold out. Yeah.
Approval, there's a huge lag in that, and it costs all this money and time and energy and gas. So you got to do that. And even if they ramp up all of the gold mines, the most they've ever been able to inflate the gold supply on an annual basis is 2.7%. So the inflation of gold is really, really, really small. And that's why historically,
it's a perfect inflation to keep things productive and make things happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why historically the really rich, the wealthy, the savvy investors they will, especially in times of uncertainty like we're in, they will go to gold because currencies like these unbacked currencies, they used to be backed until 1971, I think, when we went off the Bretton Woods. They took it off the gold standard then, and that's when we became fully fiat, is what they call it. It's totally unbacked. There's nothing limiting how much they can print, and once we're into that kind of situation, then when we do kind of enter these crisis situations, the smart, elite, wealthy investors will go to hard assets like gold and stuff like that. So gold historically has been that store of value. And if you look at the chart, it far outperforms any government currency. The US dollar, I believe it's already lost 98% of its value when you compare it to gold since its creation, which is
Yep,
insane. It's
something
hard to
like that.
believe, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's basically worthless. We're at the last 2% of the value of the dollar. And,
Yeah.
you know, people that just
And if
aren't.
you keep hyperinflating it, it's going to become 0.01, of gold,
Yeah,
percent.
they're back into a corner. I mean, I've been hearing talk that they might come out with a gold-backed currency, a new treasury bill that Trump might introduce as an attempt to save the US. And I think it would be probably their best play. Like I'm kind of expecting a new central bank digital currency to be issued by the US Treasury, that it'll be a digital currency, so kind of similar to Bitcoin, and I think they may back it with gold
Back
to
it with gold, yeah.
some confidence in the
But
market.
that's after the hyperinflation happens, because there's nothing like, I made a video a few days ago about Trump. Well, actually, I think it was the hyperinflation video, where I believe that what Trump has been doing is actually what he wanted all along. I actually believe that to drain the swamp, he actually has to create the hyperinflation to end the Fed, so that the politicians and the elites don't have the power to do anything else. Like, we actually have to return back to the gold standard. And so in that regard, like, I look at everything that he's been doing as a lead up to being reelected, so that he can so that the hyperinflation happens, so that he can bring it back to the gold standard and kind of bring back the greatness of America again. Obviously, a huge collapse is going to happen, and basically the people that have the precious metals and or Bitcoin will be the ones that get saved throughout that event, because it is an event and it will happen, in my opinion. Like it's 99% chance that it will happen, if you understand economy and what's going on.
There's no way to print this much money and not have the currency devalue. It's for easy math. You can just see, if you double the money supply, the purchasing power will get cut in half, because there's twice as much in circulation, but the same amount of assets. So now,
and you make the same amount of money at your job, right?
Well,
it's not like your job is going to continuously increase. You get a 50% raise next month, and then next month again I'm going to give you a 50% raise. It doesn't work like that. No. If you got a job, you're gonna suck. Like, it's gonna suck for you because of the hyperinflation. So if you have a job right now, this is the best time to take that money and invest it in precious metals, gold, silver. Some people say that silver is a better investment right now because it's so undervalued, and or Bitcoin. So tell us now why you believe Bitcoin actually might have an edge over gold, even though gold has been the go-to when currencies have massively devalued. Throughout history, that's been the case. But this is the first time in history we actually have a digital currency that's kind of stood the test of time, since the last recession. Why Bitcoin? Why could it be actually better investment than gold?
Well, I mean, I love Bitcoin. The more I've learned about it, I get so excited about it. I don't think people really understand what it is. It's like, people get annoyed about how much I talk about Bitcoin, but they have no idea the power of it or what this actually means. Mm-hmm. So gold, for instance, gold is highly centralized. So like Gaddafi, for instance, he caught on to the scam, which most people do, that the US government just creates this currency out of thin air and then they buy limited resources with it. So they're buying the oil from the Middle East with phony money they just print. It's not like they're trading a hard asset for it and so Gaddafi came in, he said, you know what, I want gold for my oil. And they basically came in and they killed him. They said you're a terrorist and they killed him because they don't want to have to pay with gold. That's really hard. It's so much easier when they can just print money out of thin air. They don't want to have to go spend resources on mining it. So
And they might not even have the gold.
yeah, no one really knows. And that's one of the key things is like gold is really centralized, and every time a country or a body of people try to embrace it as a currency, it gives these powers that be a point of centralized attack. So they get to say, oh, you want to use gold? Well, we can just take you out and kill you, and we know how to do that. But with Bitcoin, it's decentralized by nature because it's a public ledger, and there's basically, so there's the whole transactional history of Bitcoin. So every single transaction that happens on the network is recorded in a public ledger, and then that ledger is copied, and there's thousands of copies that are distributed all over the world. And so in order for them to take out Bitcoin, they would have to knock out every single ledger that exists in the entire world, and they don't even know where they all are. They're scattered across the globe. So there's no central point of attack, which is beautiful, because with gold, they can always see who's trying to embrace it, and they can go after them. While with Bitcoin, they can't really do that. And another thing with Bitcoin that I like is that uh, it's completely decentralized, and the thing is with gold, it's owned by all the elites already. They already own, like central banks own a lot of gold. They've been buying gold like mad over the last few years. And I went to buy gold just 2 months ago here in Canada when all this was going down. I thought I better increase my gold holdings, and they wanted $12,000 minimum order for gold. And I mean, and I had to wait 8 weeks minimum. So I have to fork up $12,000 and wait 8 weeks to get delivery of the gold. And I thought to myself, like, how many people have $12,000 sitting around right now? Not many, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so gold has kind of become inaccessible to a lot of people. Like your average person, they're lucky if they have $100 to put towards something. And
Mm-hmm.
so gold's out of the question for them, and silver as well. Silver had a $2,500 minimum order, so it's really become inaccessible to your average person. Where Bitcoin, you can buy any fraction of Bitcoin. It's highly divisible, so you could put in $10. And that's what I like about it, is that anyone can get their hands on it. It doesn't, like, anyone can become a part of this. You can
Yeah.
just take $10 off every check and just go buy a little Bitcoin and just start tucking it away. And it's interesting because as you look how we're progressing and moving forward, especially with this COVID thing, everything is getting pushed online. We have to social distance, and all the businesses is online and all that. Well, how are you supposed to transact? If I want to buy something from China and all I have is gold, if gold's our main currency, what, I'm going to like try and shave off a little fraction and weigh it and then put it in the mail and insure it, send it to you. You're going to get it. You got to verify it, all that. Then you're going to send me, like, it just doesn't work. So
No.
something like Bitcoin, I can send it anywhere in the world without any permission, 24 hours a day. I don't need anyone's
Yep.
permission. I can send you Bitcoin right now, and I could send it from my phone, and boom, it'd be on your phone, and you'd have it. We don't have to ask permission. I could send $1 billion if I want. It's
I
pretty,
know.
right?
And there's a max limit of Bitcoin that can ever be created, right? Right now they're at what, 17 million or something, close
Yeah.
to that or something. But 21 million is the max cap, and you won't be able to create more Bitcoins after that, right? So it's a limited supply, which is one of the reasons why gold is so fantastic, because you have to do all this in order to get to create it. And from what I understand, that's the same thing with Bitcoin. and it's also decentralized in the sense that there's no middleman. There's no bank. You become your own bank when you
Hmm.
own your own Bitcoin account. And the only thing that, could take that away from you is someone getting hold of your passwords. That's it. So if you actually manage to safeguard your passwords, no one can actually get hold of your Bitcoin. Not even the government can get hold of it. Because now these days, if you go bankrupt or whatever, the government can go into the bank and tell the bank that we want to take out this much money because he's bankrupt. He's not allowed to have this much money on his account. But with cryptocurrency, with Bitcoin, they can't do it. The only way to do it is by putting you in prison. But if a lot of people have Bitcoin, like we're talking millions of people, the government doesn't have, they can't put millions of people in prison.
That's just
They
it.
can't illegalize cryptocurrency and Bitcoin on a massive scale once it kicks in, and it hasn't kicked in. That's the whole point.
We're still so early. Very few people hold Bitcoin yet. I think the price is going much, much higher. I think it's going well into the 100,000 plus. Like Max Keiser's talking 400,000 now. The Plan B modeling is showing us at 288,000 per Bitcoin sometime in the next 4 years. So there's a good chance this is going much higher. This isn't financial advice, but I'm just trying to
Of course.
outline the potential of what this could be, because that's a lot of gains. If we're looking at, it's under $10,000 right now, and if it goes to even 100K, that's a 10x. So if you manage to put away, let's say you take all these stimulus checks you're getting from your government, $1,000 every month. Let's say you take every one for the next 6 months and you go into Bitcoin, that's 60 grand. If that 10x's, you're going to have $600,000 possibly in the next 4 years. That could be the best play you've ever made in your life. I mean, you might just be a festival going hippie who has no money, and you get these stimulus checks and you just decide to make the right play by taking a chance. And next thing you know, you have over $500,000. Now you can go and buy a house cash. I mean, and the reason there's so much potential is because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. That's what people don't understand. We've never had a new money come out that could get around their point of attack. They've always been able to attack it and take it out and maintain dominance. Bitcoin, because of its decentralized nature, they can't attack it. And the beautiful thing about it is it has what's called a set inflation schedule. So I talked a little bit about gold's inflation being, the average is actually a little around 2% annual
Yeah.
inflation.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin has a set inflation schedule that's built into the protocol, into the design of it, where every 4 years the inflation gets cut in half. So that means the new Bitcoin coming onto the market. So that just happened 2 or 3 days ago now, where we hit the halving, which is a once every 4 year event, and the inflation of Bitcoin just got cut down to 1.7%. So it's now harder to create than gold. It's now what we like to call it hard money, because you want your money difficult to create. If your money's easy to create, it devalues quickly because anyone
Yeah.
can come counterfeit it. If it's hard to
Exactly.
create, that means it's really hard for people to counterfeit it. You can't counterfeit Bitcoin. No
Yeah.
one's ever done it. It's impossible. And moving forward, there'll be less and less. In 2024, we're going to hit 0.9% inflation, and then
Oh my gosh.
0.45, and it just gets harder and harder because there's less and less of it coming onto the market, and so the price is going up, and those that are holding it, why would they sell? Are they going to want to sell for these government currencies that are just devaluing? I mean,
Why would you do that?
they're
That's
just
why
gonna
people are
hold.
holding their Bitcoin, right? Because there's no purpose of getting rid of it now once it's massively going to increase. And this is also like people complain that, oh, well, you can't use your Bitcoin for anything. You just basically, it just sits there, blah, 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 because no one wants to transact in it. And it's like,
Yeah.
yes, there's a reason for that. It's because it's a storage of value. Once you have it, it's yours and it's yours forever. And the more people actually begin to understand its power, the more power it will have. Like, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like, the more
sure.
people embrace it and believe in it, the more, you know, its value is going to massively increase. So,
Yeah. And it's
I'm
up to us if we adopt it. Like the more of us that embrace it and start holding it, it's up to us if this is the new currency that we embrace as a global community. I mean,
absolutely.
we could take out the US dollar. And if we take out the US dollar, that puts us, I think some of the models show like maybe $1 million a Bitcoin or something. I'm not totally sure, but
We can take out all of the currencies with this thing. Like, from a libertarian standpoint, like in 2016 is when I heard about Bitcoin. It was already at 6,000. I was driving my Uber, and people were talking about Bitcoin. The end of 2016, like, it was
yeah.
massively increasing and stuff like that. And I was, because this was actually 4 years ago, meaning it was the last halving, right?
Okay.
I didn't know about the halving at that time, and that's the exponential growth that went to, within a year it had gone to 20K, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of what's going on right now, is that it's very silent before the storm, but we know that most probably, right? Again, not financial advice, that the increase of Bitcoin is going to happen now in the next year as a result of history. If we just look at what's happened in history after the halving. So, but anyway, um, what I want to find out is, how can you best buy Bitcoin right now if you don't have a lot of cash, you don't have a lot of money, and you just want to get hold of a little bit just to kind of dip your toe in it. Well, how would you recommend we do that?
I mean, the cheapest way to do it is to actually get registered with an exchange, and it takes a bit of time. So I would suggest it doesn't cost any money. I would suggest just going ahead and getting started with that now, because what happened back in the last bull run after the last halving is all of a sudden the price started moving up and everyone wanted in, and
Mm.
it takes a long time just to learn all how to buy it, how to store it, all the security, getting verified, all this stuff takes time. So you want to be doing that now. You don't want to be doing it when the price is like going up 10% a day and you're scrambling. It's going to take you 2 or 3 weeks or a month to even be able to buy some. So there are other ways to buy for cash quicker and that, but you'll pay a premium. So if you're looking to buy with the least amount of cost associated with it, I would say get registered with an exchange. I'm not going to suggest any exchanges because the exchanges actually are the weakest link. That's how you can get hacked. Because when you have your Bitcoin in an exchange, you don't have what's called your private keys. It's kind of like having your money in a bank. You have the money, it's yours, but you don't have it in your physical possession. And if that exchange gets hacked, your Bitcoin are gone. And that happens all the time. We've had all kinds of exchanges get hacked. So not to give you a whole bunch of
Not all of the time, right? It doesn't happen all of the time. It's a
yeah,
big
you're
thing if an exchange gets taken down, right?
true.
But
It's true.
but I
A
completely
year or
agree with you
so.
that it's way safer to get it down to your own hardware wallet. So basically, guys, educate yourself on this, because this is, from our opinion, it's the future, and it's something that we all have to understand. We all have to study it. We don't have to understand the nitty gritty, become programmers, even though could be recommended, because this gonna, I believe it's gonna really take over a lot of things. But there are a few regulated exchanges, like highly regulated exchanges. So we could mention them just for people who have no idea. But at least Coinbase, from my experience, is the one that's very expensive in terms of fees and stuff, but it's highly regulated, and there's a lot of big businesses that cooperate with them.
Nice.
Is that a suggestion we could come out with?
Yeah, I personally haven't used Coinbase, but I know a lot of people that do.
Yeah.
Personally, I've been using Kraken. I've had Bitcoin held on their exchange for a long time. Never had a problem there. I've used Bitfinex, Bittrex. I've used those are the
Or
other two.
Binance.
Binance. I've used all of those. So um, I
So
don't know.
study it out for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Again, not
You know,
financial advice.
do
People
your
figure
research
out
on that.
themselves. Do your research. Yeah.
It really depends how much you're holding and how secure you want to be. I mean, I'll just show you. I got this. This is, I don't know if you can even see that. So that's just I have this wallet on my phone. It's called Coinomi. And like I've had, yeah, it's 500 US dollars. That's been on there for a long time. It's never been hacked. I mean, sure, you're running risk, but it just depends. Like if $500 is your entire net worth, then maybe you don't want to have that all on your phone. But I mean, if maybe, if you have if you're only investing, say, $50, it's not the end of the world if you got hacked. So you don't need to go and buy $150 special hardware
Hardware
wallet
wallet.
because you only have $50. So to start out, it wouldn't even hurt just to hold it on the exchange to start, to be
Right.
honest. I
Right.
mean, you are running a bit of a risk, of a hack, but it's not super common where you're going to
But
get.
I mean, Coinbase in the last 4 years hasn't been hacked at all, right?
Exactly.
So it's quite safe. But again, if you're kind of paranoid, then I mean, you would have been in this space a long time ago if you were
Yeah.
paranoid. You know what I mean? Or else because you would have gotten out of the fiat dollars a long time ago. So that for those of you who do trust banks right now, well, let's increase the security level and go to Bitcoin exchanges because that's more trustworthy, in my opinion, than banks.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I
You know,
mean, crazy.
so yeah. So anyway, I think we can stop there. Actually, just one last thought. I just want to mention to people, I'm a very strong opinionated on politics guy in terms of libertarianism. This is what I discovered when I began to learn about female nature and femininity and masculinity, which is what I talk about on my channel. That's when I understood politics. I had no interest in politics before then, but the moment it clicked, me understanding female nature, masculinity, and femininity, that's when I understood it. So maybe in the next video I should explain a little bit more about that. But
Okay.
but but libertarianism is basically that there's limited government. Their only responsibility is to protect our freedoms and protect us from harm and violence and threats, etc. But other than that, the economy is completely unregulated and people are allowed to do what they want to do and exchange and trade with people the way they want to do it. It's basically the government allowing you to do whatever you want as long as you don't harm other people.
Hmm.
Bitcoin is the solution for that. There is nothing else that progresses libertarianism faster than a currency like Bitcoin. So that's kind of just the last thing I want to mention on that. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on my channel and sharing this vital information with us. This sets us up perfectly for our future, for our families, for Three Girls in Love, for those that are interested in that. And I'm fired up to have you here, man. I'm excited for this journey.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you having me on the channel. And you guys, if you're checking this out, I recommend just going to my own channel, The Curious Cat.
Absolutely,
Find it on
absolutely.
YouTube. And I talk a little more in depth about Bitcoin and some personal growth kind of stuff. So yeah, find me there. And I have so much more to say, but I know we've already rambled on long enough. So I won't keep it too long. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to talk again and go a little more in depth. But
For sure, for
get your
sure.
hands on some Bitcoin, guys. I mean, it's just, there are all these other currencies as well. However, it's just start with Bitcoin. You need to start figuring out how to use it, how to buy it, how to store it, how to trade it, that kind of stuff. Just get your hands wet a little bit. Start with $10, $20, $50, just so you get used to it. And a couple things I just wanted to add. You can buy it at Bitcoin ATMs with cash. And you can also buy through buylocalbitcoins.com. It's a little more sketchy because you actually have to go and meet
I
some.
tried it. It doesn't really work
Okay.
where I'm at, but maybe in
Okay.
America or Canada or places like that could work better.
Yeah. So, I mean, the best place is the exchange. and all that. And yeah, get your hands on a little bit. Now is the time before the next big run up here that's going to happen. I believe we'll probably see it in 6 months from now. We'll see the huge run, but it could start sooner. So it is a good time to just at least get your hands wet and get used to it, so that if you do decide to put a little more of your wealth into it, you already know how to do that when the time comes.
Absolutely. So his channel again is The Curious Cat on YouTube, and it's awesome topics there. I love following him. I comment every time I'm on his channel, and I'll put the link below on this video. And again, man, thanks so much for being with us. Comment down below if you have any questions, and if you guys want to hear another video to go a little bit more in depth. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Joseph.